Adams, local government teacher at Bakersfield High and author, is joining us to talk about this historic moment after the assassination attempt on former President Trump. So President Biden said this weekend that this sort of violence is unheard of in America, but unfortunately we know that that's just not true. We've had 4 assassinations of U.S. presidents in our nation's history and more than a dozen attempted assassinations between presidents and candidates. So everyone is saying right now, we've not ever seen this sort of division in our country, that we're at a fever pitch. But do you think that that's actually true?
Yeah, that's just not true. I think what's so shocking and galling to so many of us is it has been a long time. The last time we had a really high-profile assassination attempt on a president was in March of 1981 with John Hinckley shooting Ronald Reagan. He actually did shoot him, and they weren't sure if he was going to live. His daughter, Patty Davis, had to be rushed to the hospital because they didn't know what was going to happen. So it's been, 43 years. But you have had a lot of assassination attempts in American history. As you referenced, we've had 4 assassinations. And to be perfectly honest, we have had political violence in the last 10 years. Remember, House Republicans, Steve Scalise was almost killed. Nancy Pelosi's husband was assaulted. You have Gabby Giffords, who was shot in the last decade. So we have had political violence in the last 10 years. It just hasn't been at a presidential level.
So I think that a lot of people see what's going on right now. They're seeing this violence. They've been concerned that something like this was possible. Sure enough, the reality is that now we have a former president and a Republican soon-to-be nominee officially who has been shot. And a lot of people are looking at this and going, this kind of reminds me of 1968 and the political violence that we saw there. As you look at throughout history, do we see these cycles of political violence happen, or is it just, are there cycles, or is it just like random?
No, you put your finger on it. And I think that's what people are so concerned with is this a one-off, or is this going to be the beginning of, you referenced the 1960s, but you have these other eras. Remember, Garfield was shot in the 1880s. You had President McKinley shot in 1898. Teddy Roosevelt was running for president in 1912 and was shot 6 feet away, and he had this crumpled speech that saved him. And that was an era. And then the 1960s, of course, you referenced John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy. Remember, Ford was shot at twice within 17 days in the early 1970s. And so these things do tend to happen in waves. And I think what people are very worried about is that we do exist in this kind of political ecosystem of polarization. Instead of persuasion and trying to convince people to come to our side, now politics is about making sure that your base is turning out. We're revving them up. We're making sure you understand that the other side is not just your opponent, that perhaps they're your enemy. And I think that's created a kind of toxic ecosystem of politics that has led to these kinds of events in the past. And I think everybody's hoping that this is a one-off and not like the 1960s that you referenced, Alex.
Over the weekend, President Biden calling for everyone to turn down the temperature on political rhetoric. Do you think in history, when you look back on these other historic events, assassination attempts, does that happen after something like this? Do people go, wow, we've gone too far, we need to pull it back, or does it continue to kind of ramp up? Could this get more heated?
And that is the question, is why do things tamp down? For instance, there's a lot of research to suggest that technology and Secret Service have gotten a lot better in the last few decades, and that's why you haven't seen this. But on the other hand, there is this notion that at the end of the day, most of these events, most of these assassination attempts are the act of somebody who is frankly, out of their mind. You look at this person who tried to kill Ronald Reagan, and this person was trying to impress Jodie Foster. The person who shot Teddy Roosevelt was worried about a third term. Garfield was a disgruntled job seeker. So you really can't attribute, I think, Maddie, any kind of trend to this, especially when it's individuals who are not mentally well doing these things. And we just have to hope that this is a one-off and that it doesn't happen again.
All right, Mr. Adams, thank you very much for coming in this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the invite.
All right, we'll be back after this.